Right, guys, thank you very much for coming. Just before I start, feel free to interrupt. If you have any questions, any notifications, you can jump in, no problem whatsoever. My presentation would be divided kind of into three segments. First, I will explain the concepts because I found them the most difficult to explain in my thesis rather than the whole thesis itself, the data set and analysis. Then the second one is about the analysis itself, and the third one is about findings. Now, if I find enough time, I will try to focus on all the slides, and I will play the videos as well so that you get to see the crux of the presentation. So let's jump in. Now, I will start with the definitions because it is quite important for you to understand what I mean by certain terms. So the state, the existence of a modern state depends on the possession of the following attributes. First and foremost, you have to have territory. It can't be in the clouds, right? Then you have to have population, and the third one is a government, all right? Now, in addition to these three characteristics, right, you have to have sovereignty, and that's what binds all these characteristics together, all right? The second one is statehood. So the word hood is a suffix, and it denotes person, condition, or quality, right? So when we talk about statehood, it's a status which is bestowed to a territory, right, which attains all these qualities that I mentioned: territory, population, government, all right? So that's the second one. Stateness is an important term because I'm talking about stateness in my thesis or in my presentation. I'm not talking about statehood. I'm trying to distinguish between these two. So stateness is the capacity of the state to exercise its fundamental functions, right? Its duties, so to speak. And the fourth one is sovereignty, which is the highest power that the state possesses within its own territory, which means the state is independent and not under the authority or of another state or community, right? It's working on its own, within its own right, okay? And the last one is performance. What I mean by performance here is the action or process of performing a task or function, and it has the theatrical connotation to it, which means a display of exaggerated behavior or a process that involves a great deal of unnecessary time and effort. Now, if you go back to the title, I speak about performances of modern stateness. So just remember that, all right? What we are going to watch today are some performances of IS. Okay, so that's clear. Now, I think pretty much people here know what IS is, right? If someone doesn't know, they were living under a rock, and now the rock is gone pretty much. So they declared the caliphate in July 2014, and at its peak, they were in control of territory in Iraq and Syria, right? But they also had presence in Afghanistan, in Egypt, in Libya, Nigeria, Yemen, and a few other places, right? Now, at its peak, they controlled the size of the UK, or that's what they claim to in their videos, right? And there was an estimated 11 million people living under their occupation, which is massive. It's bigger than many of the states in the world. Now they have been reduced to pockets in Iraq, in Egypt, Nigeria, Syria, Yemen, but they are resurgent in Afghanistan and in Libya. And they have been launching some operations in Iraq and Syria as well, right? The top leadership has been eliminated, and we don't know about the new ISIS Amir, okay? Now, basically what I am arguing in this project is ISIS's official propaganda videos, they were based on the popular maxim, fake it till you make it. This is what they were trying to do. They were faking a state till they actually made it to a state, all right? And the main objective was to bring into existence a caliphate with the help of, it was a fusion of fact and reality, right? And they were showing that they are engaged in performing duties associated with modern states, such as providing security, safety, and services to its citizens, right? Now, IS, they tried to achieve these two important goals by releasing slick propaganda videos, right? the first objective was to give local population, their subjects, the impression that their needs are met across the caliphate. They were showing these videos. There were video kiosks in many cities, at roundabouts and places, right? And it was to show that, listen, in this part or even in your city, this is what we are doing, right? So that was the first objective. The other one was to attract immigrants from other countries of the world. When they watch these videos, they see, okay, a state is being established and we need to go and be part of that state, okay? So these were the major objectives, right? And the third, and another point I argue in my thesis is that the intention was not to seek international recognition, that is statehood. That was not their objective. They didn't want to be part of UN. They didn't want to be part of Arab League or any other organizations. That was not the point. In fact, they wanted to counter that, okay? Now, a lot has been argued about the Islamicness of ayats, right? Everyone says they are Islamic, they are un-Islamic, this, that, and the other. But very few people have talked about the stateness of ayats, like especially how their state-like performances were, okay? Very few people focused on that. There are two really good studies which looked at the depictions of statehood. One was by Aaron Anfinson in 2019, and then the other one was by Karim Al-Damanhouri, that was in 2019 as well, and they looked at it with the help of Tabiq and An-Naba newsletter, right? Now, there was none which looked at the propaganda videos and tried to see what the state looked like, right? So this is the first of its kind, and it's a visual longitudinal analysis of ISIS's state-like performances, in which I looked at hundreds of videos from July 2014 when it was established all the way to mid-2017 when it was dismantled, right? Now, I explore four major aspects of the caliphate. So I have 4 case studies: population, territory, government, and foreign policy, which is based on the Montevideo Convention of 1933, right? So if you meet these 4 conditions or these 4 criteria, you are going to be recognized as a state, or that's what they say, all right? So I offer a concise account of ISIS's existence as a caliphate and the stage performances in such capacity, right? And in essence, I'm trying to contribute to the historiography of IS, right? Now, there are certain limitations. I will point them out straight away. This study is entirely focused on ISIS's official propaganda videos. It's official, like the ones they released, okay? And whatever they showed, it's not necessarily a depiction of reality, okay? There is a lot of fiction in it, right? There's a lot of staged performances in it. Now, the performances of modern stateness are a blend of fact and fiction, while their narratives are extremely one-sided, and they just offer black and white. That's it. It's good versus evil, right versus wrong, bright or light versus darkness. That's it, okay? Now, most of the people who appear in these videos, they're of 2 types, or at least that's how I perceive them. One is the local populace, who have no other choice but to comply and act as directed. So when they were making these videos, definitely there was a director, and definitely there was camera crew involved, and they were asked to do certain things. It wasn't all spontaneous, right? And the other type of participants in these videos are loyal ISIS supporters, right? They were loyal, they were willing to lie, they were willing to exaggerate anything that helped the caliphate, okay? Now, the conceptual framework, and I talk about this because this was difficult, and this is something I will remember forever. So the first thing is that the project, it contends that ISIS's state-like performances in its official videos were for the purposes of expressing stateness. So they were showing their stateness, their performances, how they are performing like a state. This is our state, this is how we are doing, and this is why you need to join us, okay? And not for statehood purposes. It wasn't their purpose at all, right? And I argue that stateness, it should be looked at from stateness perspective and not statehood, because stateness depends on the state's inward outlook, what it does, its duties, its performances, rather than its outward outlook, right? Outward outlook is what the international community perceives it as. And based on that, it confers membership of UN and other international bodies, all right? Now, the second one I argue is the performances which are documented in the videos should not be treated as substantive. So there's an important distinction. Substantive, where it matters, where it's real, right? Versus theatrical, right? So when you arrive at the airport, an immigration officer looks at your documents and puts a stamp. That's theatrical. There's no need for that as such, but it's done, right? For the purpose of saying that, welcome to the country, right? But substantive is when the statistics are maintained, how many people are getting into the country, how many people are leaving. That's substantive performance, all right? So yeah, these are the two important distinctions I made in the conceptual framework. Okay. Now, in terms of the data set, yeah, so I had 374 videos, right? And I divided them according to the case studies. Now, in terms of the data set, so most of the data set is during the Caliphate era, but some comes from pre-Caliphate era and some from post-Caliphate, and that's for context purposes, right? Now, one video I would like to show you, it's a very short clip, just to give you an idea.
شريعتنا المنارات والمثال ومشكاة الهدايات والكمال هي الحق الذي زهق الدياجي وباء بخزيه الكفر المذال ففسطاط بها الإيمان يعلو وفسطاط به هاج الضلال حدود الله فيها قد أقيما.
Right, so this is from population case study. It can go on forever, but we don't have time for that. Now, in terms of the case study in population, these are the performances, the major performances. So if you have a look at the top, the locals were the focus of the population, right? In terms of duration, out of 18 hours of footage that was included in the data set, almost 3 hours of footage was associated with the locals. Like it was locals that were shown in that footage, which is roughly around 20%, right? So they were very keen on showing their subjects, their population, the people who are living in the state itself, right? Now, equally important were the foreign fighters or the immigrants, right? And they comprise 18%. So they were trying to take them together, hand in hand, right? So that's that. And this is the software I use, MaxQDA. Here is the video, and this is the coding, right? So it's extensive coding because it's based on what I'm seeing on the screen, right? I didn't apply any theory, nothing like that. It's just what you see is what you get, okay? Right. Now, I'm really sorry I don't have time to show the videos. I thought that I will have that luxury, but doesn't seem to be the case. Now, in territory case study, what I saw that there was a pattern. The first one in their videos, this is actually like the videos, how the videos have been scripted and performed. The first stage is identification. So they identify the territory they are going to capture, right? And they use aerial views like drones and maps to show that this is the area they are going to capture. And then as soon as they identify, they go to expansion. They show actual fighting footage, right? They are launching an attack with their army, right? And then they show the enemy. They also make sure that this is the enemy. The enemy is always clear, right? Then fighting ensues, and after the fight, there is defeat of the enemy, and they go on to capture war booty. And then after that, they show that they are demolishing those border posts or those checkpoints whatsoever, right? And the third one is projection. Then they show that after the capture of the territory, Now we have this new place, there is new life, it's peaceful life and things like that, right? So there is a whole pattern here, right? Now, in terms of footage, I had almost 14 hours of territory-themed videos. It was very obvious that this is about territory, right? And this is like they somehow they demarcated their territories, even though they were like a totalitarian state and they never believed in maps and things because it was always remaining and expanding, right? But they did show that this is the territory they control. Now, if you want to see the videos, you can come to me later. But the case studies in governance. So in governance, you can see that there were three distinct branches, right? The first branch was law and order. And in law and order, it was Hizbah, their religious police force, right? And it was like, let's say 17%, but the law and order was very important for IS because 47% of the entire footage was focused on law and order, right? So they showed they had an army, they showed criminals, right? Security forces, punishments, of course, that was the most gruesome part, right? But they also showed preaching and they showed confiscated goods, right? And then rewards as well. People who were complying with the laws and the law and order, they were rewarded for that. Now, the second one is services. That's very important because that's how we understand states, yeah? 30% of the footage has to do with services, provision of services. Civic services like laying roads, improving tolls and things like that, but also healthcare, ties between different tribes, religious ceremonies, right? And things like that, education, food and water, currency, and finance and things like that. So services was quite important, okay? And the third one is administrative. So they show these IS officials sat in their plush offices wearing white, neat clothes, right? And IT is right beside them. Okay. So things like that, right? And this is how it looked. Now, I will quickly jump to foreign relations. So these are the performances of foreign relations. It was mostly IS fighters who were talking about what the foreign policy is like, why they hate everyone, right? It was mostly why we hate the others, why the others are not like us, and this is why we hate them, right? They also identified enemies of IS. Now, key findings. There is a certain storytelling pattern in all the videos. It's not mishmash, right? It's not random. It's planned. It's all scripted, right? And they were subconscious of the Westphalian state model. And that's why their videos were modeled according to that, right? And their unique selling point was not statehood, but stateness, right? And they made use of OSINT, open source intelligence, right? Now, perhaps they were aware that they are not going to exist forever and it's going to come to a close, but they still wanted to make this project and make it as a point of reference for future jihadis, right? So that was one. Now, in population-themed videos, we saw that there is a delineation of Ansar versus Muhajirin. Very clear that the locals are Ansar and the immigrants are Muhajirin, and it was based on the model of Medina from 7th century, like during Prophet Muhammad's time, right? And then they showed that the local people are loyal and they're trying to help the state, and the foreigners are here. They have left behind their cool lives in their countries and they are building a state, right? The women were invisible, completely invisible. There were like one or two instances where you could see a woman, but of course she was draped in black overalls, right? Now, boys were at the forefront, whereas the girls were there, but they were kind of like the pearls, you know, it was like very limited, their exposure, right? And overall, they were grooming the boys, the young boys, to be the next generation of the caliphate, right? The cubs of the caliphate, right? So in a nutshell, they projected a vibrant population like any other state in the world, but they were living in a unique way, which was very caliphatic, so to speak, right? Now, in territory-themed videos, they showed that they are in control of towns and cities and desert and fields and all these places in between, right? They highlighted that they have a strategy for territorial expansion, and it's very clear. And okay, if you give me 1 minute, yeah, I will wrap it up. God, that's the most difficult thing. Anyway, so it was key stages, right? And they also showed this in Dabiq magazine as well. So it was part of a plan. It wasn't like just going along the way, right? So yeah, now governance, this is important. So what they showed that they have different branches, distinct branches, right? And the civil servants are working like any other civil servants in the world. Their purpose is to serve their people, right? And they're honest and transparent and things like that. And they're using modern technology to help fulfill their tasks, right? And yeah, basically it was propagandistic in nature, but this is the closest we can ever get to ISIS's governance, because no one dared venture when IS was a state, because everyone knew what's going to happen to them, right? So gives us a glimpse of their workings of a government, right? Now the last one, and very quickly, foreign policy videos, as you may know, it was based on extinction of gray zone theory, right? And under this theory, it was basically us versus them, right? Everyone is wrong and we are rightful, right? And they used verses from Quran and Hadith, but whenever it didn't suit them, they made some exceptions, right? Like the burning of the Jordanian pilot and Turkish soldiers, it was based on their own whims, it had nothing to do with the religion. But other parts, they were based on religion. Thanks a million. Sorry I took some time, but if you have questions.